Ramadan Kareem, everyone. Okay, Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, Mayor Khan, Bishop Allen, Imam Suleiman, honoured guests, good evening and a huge welcome from me to Milton Keynes College to this Iftar celebration event. I'm Julie Mills and I'm the Chief Executive of Milton Keynes College and your stand-in MC this evening. I'm covering for the wonderful Hilly Edwards, who sadly has come down with COVID today. I'm sure you will all join me in wishing her well and a speedy recovery, and I will do my best to ensure that this Iftar celebration runs smoothly. It's so uplifting to have the opportunity to come together to celebrate the incredible diversity in this wonderful place that many of us call home, Milton Keynes, and to be here together to celebrate this Iftar event today, particularly at a time when there's so much going on in the world to divide us. Coming together as an interfaith community encourages us, I think, to focus on those values we share, the values of peace and charity, the importance of family and community. And being part of its community is a really earnest aspiration for Milton Keynes College. We truly want to be a college that is there for the whole of the community, not just part of it. And we want to play our part in creating the shared success and the shared future for all of us in Milton Keynes. And that includes supporting local businesses of all sizes and from all sectors. And that's why I'm so delighted to hear this evening about the local focus we've got on locally sourced food, and to all of the local businesses who have supported us by providing the amazing feast that we will be having later on. And I know we're all looking forward to the feast, and I'm sure I can imagine that those of you that have been fasting since, just after 4 a.m. this morning are really looking forward to the feast that we have coming. But this gathering is a joyful occasion, and part of the joy I feel, I think, is because of the context of the last 2 years, where we have all had to navigate that global pandemic. And we've all had to deal with the disruption and the change to the ways in which we have been able to come together as a community. Well, in fact, we've had to deal with the fact that we haven't been able to come together as a community. And it's thanks to the great work and determination of Mkiac, led by Anwar and his team of volunteers and supporters, that we are able to be here tonight. I think we all went through COVID, and at the beginning when it was announced there was a lot of talk about saying we're all in it together, we're all in the same boat. But I think as the pandemic rolled out, we might have all been in the same storm, but we weren't all in the same boat. We all experienced it very, very differently. And now, as we're transitioning into a post-pandemic world, we're all having to relearn about how to be together. We're having to relearn about how to feel comfortable in big groups, about how to be at work, about how to be in an empty house when we've had it filled with family for the last 2 years, or about how to be with family when you've been on your own for the last 2 years. And joining together and being able to connect and having conversations is such an important part of this transition. And what a wonderful opportunity we have tonight to do that, to learn to be together and to celebrate with each other. So we are here, as I say, because of the great works of Mkiac, a charity that aims to enrich lives through culture, a charity which has brought diverse communities together over the last 20 years. They do a huge amount of work with college students and, of course, a number of significant public art events, including the City of Light, which I'm sure many of you will have attended, and, of course, the nationally renowned Art in the Park, which before the pandemic, of course, attracted over 18,000 people to the event next to Willen Lake. I'm delighted to share with you that Art in the Park is back this year for 2022, so please clear the 14th and 15th of May in your calendars, because that's when we'll be back at Campbell Park, and I look forward to seeing you all there.
This is the opportunity to bring everyone together, and we are happy to be here. As you can see, mashallah, a lot of people, mashallah, children especially loving it, as well as the adults, and we've had a good time. Food was excellent, company was nice. Managed to see people we haven't seen for like 3-4 years. Events like these are important. Basically, it gives an opportunity for the Muslims and non-Muslims, believers and non-believers, and the different communities within Milton Keynes. It allows them to bring together, share experiences from each other's communities and cultures, maybe taste the different food.
Anwar has asked us to think about our impact on the planet and how we can reduce our carbon footprint and how to develop a more sustainable way of life. He's chosen this theme during the month of Ramadan so that we place these challenges at the forefront of our thoughts and actions. And as Her Majesty the Queen's representative in Buckinghamshire, I am aware that we've been given a very strong lead by the Queen and members of the royal family, and the importance that they place on tackling climate change. So during the COP26 summit in Glasgow last November, Her Majesty exhorted us to put aside small-scale politics and achieve true statesmanship through, and I quote her, coming together as a community of nations with a determination, a desire, and a plan to address the impact of climate change. Her endorsement of the tree planting programme, the Queen's Green Canopy, as part of her Platinum Jubilee celebrations, is a project which allows everyone in the county to contribute towards carbon capture through the planting of trees. Now, the Prince of Wales has long been an advocate for tackling climate change, and he has frequently pointed out that commitments at world climate gatherings have been made in day-to-day activities, but many things have led society to become distracted from their promised targets. And last year, for example, at COP26, he encouraged us, saying, this time we cannot afford to lose momentum. 2021 cannot be yet another year of a false dawn. We simply cannot go on ignoring the fact that for millions of people in dangerously vulnerable parts of the world, climate change and biodiversity are already devastating their lives and livelihoods and making where they live uninhabitable. And what is clear, he says, is that our actions matter. We must reduce emissions and take action to tackle the carbon already in the atmosphere. And he concludes, after billions of years of evolution, nature remains our best teacher. So when we look for answers on how humankind can live more sustainably with the planet, we should let nature be our guide. So as we gather together this evening, before the break of the Ramadan fast, we can reflect on ways in which each of us can reduce our negative impact on the planet. And our thoughts turn to food, and how appropriate that it's just coming in, and how to feed the world's population, and of course the impact of food production on our fragile planet. And as we look at ways of addressing climate change, the role of the food we eat has come into the spotlight, and it is now evident how much we can all individually do by adapting our diets. I was moved the other day when my son told me that he had gone into a supermarket to buy some hummus, and he had taken the decision not to buy it in ready-made in a little plastic pot. Instead, he had chosen a tin of chickpeas that he was going to turn into hummus himself. I, of course, pointed out to him that actually the extracting of that tin and the transporting of heavy tins added to the complexity of his decision-making, and that actually food and where it comes from is a much more complicated, complex issue than we perhaps are led to think. I was also shocked to discover that methane gas, which is generated by both animals in their manure and as a byproduct of food waste, methane gas has 80 times the warming power than carbon dioxide over the first 20 years. Carbon dioxide is worse in the long term, but methane gas has a much greater warming power in the short term. So, by reducing our consumption of animal products and by reducing food waste, we can help to mitigate climate change. And I found myself looking into my fridge and thinking, what am I going to do with this food before it goes past its sell-by date? And how can I prevent it from growing its inevitable beard and then ending up in the rubbish bin? And of course, the thing to do is to cook it and to freeze it if you have the opportunity to freeze it, or to cook it and to get on and eat it straight away. And now, as I understand it, sustainable food is of course sourced locally, and that reduces transportation costs and pollution from transport, and ideally it's fresh. And by encouraging a very flexitarian approach and reducing the amount we eat, we can make a real difference. Equally, refusing plastic cutlery, or not buying bottled water, or carrying a reusable coffee cup are all small ways in which we collectively can make a big impact. Now, as Muslims embark on the holiest month of Ramadan this April, it is a time for spiritual reflection and growth, to help those in need, and to exercise patience and self-control. These practices are all the nourishment for the soul and instill compassion for those facing food insecurity. My good wishes are with all those who are observing Ramadan, and I would encourage us all to follow their example and take some time to reflect on how our relationship with food impacts the planet. And I'd like to conclude by warmly endorsing the words of Her Majesty used at the end of her speech to COP26, when she said, "I have drawn great comfort and inspiration from the relentless enthusiasm of people of all ages, and especially the young, in calling for everyone to play their part." Thank you.
The college and MKIAC have worked together closely on a number of events through the years, and particularly around Ramadan, and the iftar is such a wonderful opportunity to bring communities together, and really that's what the college is about. We're a college for all our communities, not just part of our community, and so this really embodies that. It's also a great opportunity for some of our students to get some voluntary work. It's a great opportunity for our catering students to experience different cultures and different types of food, so it's just a win-win really. Everyone benefits from it.
Good evening, Lord Lieutenant, Mr Mayor, Bishop Allen, and all honourable and distinguished guests here tonight. It is a wonderful evening to be with you, and thank you, Anwar and the MKIAC trustees, for inviting me to this beautiful evening's Interfaith Ramadan Ethical Iftar. Tonight is an opportunity for people who know little about the traditions of Ramadan to join with those for whom it is a central part of their beliefs and practices. It's essential to a relationship and community building to enable this understanding and appreciation of the many and different customs and traditions that people hold dear. Last Friday, I made a declaration which followed another ancient tradition of the monarch pricking a roll of parchment with the name of her high sheriffs, using a bodkin to make a hole next to the name. The declaration I made last Friday in front of many witnesses enabled me to take up the office of the High Sheriff of Buckinghamshire. It called on me to treat all people equally, to respect the differences and diversity of our communities, to support and encourage all who give their time, skills, and commitment for the benefit of others. It's an enormous honour and a responsibility to hold an ancient office that is so valued, and a great privilege to use the role to thank the many people who give their time selflessly to help others and to congratulate those who have done something very special and extraordinary, just like organising tonight's event, and so many other initiatives that Julie talked about that I know MKIAC organise. Thank you for the hospitality and the sharing on offer tonight. For 2 successive years, Muslims have had to mark the holy month in the midst of the coronavirus. I'm sure during that time of panic buying, stocking up on essential ingredients to make the traditional foods must have been difficult in that first year. In the second, perhaps it was a little bit easier. However, Ramadan is not just about fasting or food, it's a social month. Travelling to be with loved ones must have been both difficult and abroad impossible. I know of the great lengths that have been gone to by many volunteers to reach out to the community, to distribute food, and I'm sure that many virtual iftars took place. But nothing can replace the sense of being with others. No doubt, for some over the past 2 years, breaking the fast has been a lonely time. Tonight is a very special occasion, made all the more so by experiences over the last 2 years. This first Ramadan out of coronavirus restrictions also coincides with the year of Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee at the beginning of June. This celebration gives us all an opportunity to meet our neighbours and the wider opportunity to wave a flag, raise a glass to Her Majesty and her incredible 70-year reign, and to get to know each other better. Thank you again for inviting me this evening, for giving us all a chance to come together in a face-to-face celebration. I wish you all the very best for Ramadan. Thank you.
This evening I was up in my classroom studying social sciences here at Milton Keynes College, and as I walked down the stairway and come into the room, I was thinking, what is this beautiful aroma? It smells so nice. And then I come in and there's just a massive community of people opening their fast for Ramadan, and honestly it's like the most beautiful community spirit, the most beautiful thing to see when at the end of my study, and to just show that Milton Keynes in itself is a lovely and diverse and great way of social inclusion.
Thank you very much. One of my predecessors, Bishop of Reading, actually, once asked, how long have I got? And a voice came out from the back saying, well, it depends whether it's any good. So it is extraordinary to be here with you. This is one of my favourite gigs in Buckinghamshire in the year, and boy, have I missed it. There is an ancient Christian vision of what heaven would be like, being with God himself. And it talks about people of all cultures and races and languages gathered together in unity. And this is one of the places in my year where it looks real. It looks as though this really could be the case, that we belong together as children of God with all the different names we have for him, all the different ways that we live. And we're not kind of homogenized into being the same. No, it's the fact we are who we are, and that is special, that makes it such a glorious evening. So thank you so much for coming. It's great to be with you. But of course, it's a very sad time for us as well. I come, as some in our city of Milton Keynes do, from refugee stock. My mother was a refugee from Hitler, and my growing up was overshadowed by family in Hungary, where my aunt had her house partially diminished by a tank that came up the road and shot away the bathroom 12 years before they had it back. So the last few months have been very, very difficult for me. We are taking in some Ukrainian friends. I know you are doing lots of extraordinary things. And for all the terrible things that are going on in this war, the way it's released a natural feeling of fellow feeling and wanting to be there for people and wanting to give, and realizing that we are all together and that we just have to reach out with our hearts. When we don't know what to pray, we don't know what to say, but we can at least reach out with our hearts and hands and wallets and do our bit together to try and make things as not awful as they could be. It's made me think of how we need to value things we've often taken for granted. You know, our freedom, our ability to live broadly in peace, to be cared for and looked after in all kinds of ways. You know, we take the things that make our lives what they are for granted so easily. And to see friends in Ukraine who are having to fight for their freedom and for their identity and for their country is deeply, deeply moving in every way. And it's a challenge for all who are involved in leadership of any sort. I mean, how extraordinary to see the president from Ukraine. How extraordinary to live in a country where our Queen has served us for 70 years. What an extraordinary thought. There are very few people in the country who have not been served by her one way or the other over those years. And today in the Times newspaper, when I opened it up, one of the saddest headlines I've ever seen in a newspaper in this country. It's the mayor, a 50-year-old woman in a town 25 miles from Kyiv. The mayor refused to abandon her people, and then they found her in a shallow grave with her children. So for Pete's sake, the cost of the life we have is considerable. And because we live in peace and security and democracy and have the freedoms we have to be ourselves and to share our lives, there is so much for which to be grateful. And for religious leaders, it's about salam, shalom, it's about peace. It's what Martin Luther King said. Peace is not the absence of war. Peace is the presence of justice. And if we want to see that, we need to be different people. We need to be positive. We need to make a difference in the small things of our lives. And for all of us, there is the challenge to live lives that express the freedom and the joy of being together. And this evening is one of those events. I'm going to wrap up with a poem I started with a couple of years ago that's come home to me in a completely different way of late, just because of the war and all that is going on in Ukraine. It's a poem by Lucy Berry. Lucy has been the resident poet on the Jeremy Vine show. That's what she does. She's one of these people where you can just chuck her a subject and she'll write a poem about it. And she makes the point that peace is not something you see on the telly. Peace is not even something that other people are responsible for. Peace is something we carry in our hearts. And the more we can do that, the more we can enjoy who we are and the differences that mark us out, but which make us so interesting and different, the more we can learn to love one another. But the choice is ours. Here is Lucy's poem. You and I, inside us, have an empire and a village. Admit it and acknowledge. Now let's forage for our courage. Citizens of empire are the haywire folk of hellfire, of hiring, firing, miring, and of razor wire and gunfire. Citizens of empire never listen to the village. Empire will imprison any profit in the village. Empire has the cash, the whips, the slaves, and the advantage. Empire screams for tribute, which the village cannot manage. Empire drinks the river, and the village feels the shortage. Empire starts the carnage, and the village needs a bandage. People of the village must rummage through the rubbish, calling through the garbage for the children in the wreckage. Empire knows to massage every message to the village, to authorise as classified each image of the pillage. Empire feeds off doubt and debt and luxury and slaughter. Village dreams of crumbs of bread and never failing water. All of us inside us have an empire and a village. Admit it and acknowledge. Now go forage for your courage. Over to you.
Interfaith events are
always going to be important. It's about building bridges between communities. But actually in Milton Keynes, which I now believe has at least 50% of its population from non-white backgrounds, I think it's an integral part of what the city represents, which is one huge community which needs to work together and celebrate our differences.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Hayya 'ala as-salah. Hayya 'ala as-salah. Hayya 'ala al-falah. Hayya 'ala al-falah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma rabb hadhihi da'wati at-tamah was-salati al-qa'imah ati sayyidina Muhammadan al-wasilata wal-fadila wad-darajata ar-rafi'ah wa ba'athu maqaman mahmudan alladhi wa'adtahu.